if you take the light from the windows, bounce off my body, and go back to your eyes, you learn a lot about me just by how visible lights interact with me. Well, if I take different colors of light, you can learn a great deal more about me. With visible light, you can sort of say I'm a frumpy scientist. Most days I don't have much fashion sense, but you've learned a lot about me. Well, if I take different colors of light, infrared like the heat you feel from the sun when you're outside on a nice day, ultraviolet like you do when you get a sunburn, x-rays like when you go to a hospital, you can learn more things. So instead of just seeing my hand and seeing the skin on my hand and my wedding band, you can start seeing the bones, internal structures, how things are put together. And so what we're doing here is we're creating that very bright light to let people understand things down the atomic and molecular level, so how the individual atoms might be put together. I got asked a question about food security and asked about what can we do with crops. Well, for example, you can use the synchrotron to understand how nutrients may transport through a plant. So you can understand how moisture might move through that plant. Or you might be able to understand how diseases start in plants. There's a lot of interest in Saskatchewan around a disease with wheat called clubroot. Clubroot is a decimating disease associated with crops in Saskatchewan. Well, the question people ask is, where does clubroot start within the plant? They have lots of good guesses and lots of good inferences and have some good, a few bit of insight. By using the synchrotron, we've been able to do advanced imaging to actually look at seeing where does that disease actually start within the plant. If you can see where it starts within the plant, you can then start trying to modifying it in such a way that you minimize that.
You can modify it with light?
We can understand what you need to do to modify it. You don't use the light to modify it. You use the light to understand where it's created, and then you can use other techniques to modify that plant. It helps us understand what's going on. So everything you're seeing out here is all the tools we need to create light. So everything here are these various accelerators. I'll show you a floor plan in a moment on what this actually looks like. But everything out here is the various synchrotron, and then we have a number of different experimental stations, all no two being the same, all doing unique things. So we can get about 25 different experimental stations in here, research centers in here. 25 different.
Experimental stations.
Yes. So we can get 25 experimental stations in here, no two being the same, so researchers can come and pick and choose what's best for what they're trying to understand. As I said, we do touch on, a facility like this does touch on all sorts of research areas. I'm an aerospace guy, so I work on aerospace materials. The reason I work on aerospace materials is because I can understand the nature of composite materials, how composite materials are put together so that you can make the next version past the Dreamliner, for example. What comes after the 787? A 797? Well, what's that made of? How do you do that? Other groups in here are working on energy storage. We do a lot of work on batteries, battery materials. How do you?
Are you using lighting for what you do?
We're using light to say, okay, if you have a battery, how does a battery function? Because there's a lot of chemistry that actually goes on inside that battery, inside your cell phone. So how is that battery actually behaving at kind of that molecular scale? So what chemistry is actually going?
Aerospace.
How do I do it in aerospace? Aerospace, a lot of it is around, if you look at the wings of an aircraft, they're made out of composite structure. So they're made out of layers of carbon material. Well, when they put that carbon material and they build it, there could be all sorts of voids and different structural defects that they can't see easily. Well, you can help them improve the manufacture of those properties. So, for example, how does a crack move through a composite material as you put stress on it? Can you improve the processing conditions to